Hello everyone, welcome to the next training of SAP FICO module. Today we'll be covering the cost center planning. In the last training session we have completed the cost center accounting. Now within cost center accounting, how we can plan different expenses, that is what all about is cost center planning. In today's topic we'll be covering an introduction on cost center planning, configuration steps, and you can say the reports as well as you can say the unit testing part. So moving on to the introduction on cost center planning. Cost center planning is handled differently in almost every business organizations. The type of industry, organizational structures and responsibilities are factored affecting planning. Cost center planning is required to segregate the expected cost with respect to each cost center. Cost center planning facilitates you to plan the cost at each cost center level and the output expected to be generated at that cost center. Cost centers are planned for specific time frames, usually for one fiscal year, but also for fiscal quarters or even for period to period. Cost center planning is divided into following planning areas. One is cost element planning, another is activity type planning. So in a nutshell, cost center planning basically refers to the planning of different expenses which are incurred or different costs which have been incurred in any organization. That may be related to manufacturing or related to administrative expenses or selling and distribution expenses, whatever it may be. You can plan those expenses as per the management, and then once when the transactions have been over for that period, the planning can be compared with the actual cost which has been incurred. So this gives you the management an overview or a better reporting perspective so as to decide where the actual expenses have been exceeded, where are the variances in the cost, and how the cost has increased or decreased for that particular product manufactured. So this is how the cost center planning works. Now moving on to the configuration steps, there are simple basic steps. One is to define the version, then defining the planning layout, and define planning profile. If we move to the first part, define version, the path is on your screen. This is the same maintain version which we have defined in the basic settings of controlling area in the first training session of SAP Controlling. We need to go and revisit the same version whether it has been maintained for cost center planning or not. So let's move on to the SAP system so as to have a look as of how we can define the version for cost center planning. So we have both the options of moving up with the path as well as the transaction code, as you can see on your screen. So let's move up with the path. The path, first we have to execute the transaction SPRO, enter. Then we need to go to SAP reference IMG, and in that we need to go to controlling. Then moving on to controlling, we need to go to cost center accounting and then planning. So cost center accounting, and within cost center accounting there is planning, and you can see within planning there is basic settings for planning and define version. So this is basic setting for planning, and then there is a define version option available to you. So we can execute this define version over here, and now you can see on your screen there are two options. One is to create authorization group for versions, and second is to maintain settings for versions in controlling area. So we can move on to the second part, that is maintain settings for versions in controlling area. We can double click on that so as to maintain the version. So the version we have already created, we need to define the controlling area over here, that is Z100, enter. So you can see the message over there, background is still, the data can be displayed only. So we can have a look on the display part. So you can see over here now, this is the version which we have created. So what you need to go and cross check is that this plan box has been activated or not. If it has been activated, that is what you are required. If you want cost center planning to be done, in that case you need to activate this plan checkbox. So that is what you need to check or activate this part. You need to go and cross check whether this particular version is active or not. And again, if you double click onto this version over here, any of this in this particular row, it will take you to the detail what the version contains within. So double click onto the version. Okay, it doesn't say anything. Okay, we can select this version from over here, and then we can move to settings for fiscal year. So once I double click onto that, you can see we have moved to the next screen, and this is a screen in front of you. These are the fiscal year which has to be maintained, the same thing which we did in the defining the version in controlling area, basic setting part. So this is what you need to revisit, whether the plan part has been activated over here or not. So if this has been activated, it's alright, else you have to activate this. You have to select this option, and once selected, it will be activated, and you need to save it. So moving back, this is what you need to go and you need to cross check in the system. That is the part of defining the version. Moving to the next step now is defining planning layout. The layout represents the options the user has on the screen when entering the plan data. It is important that planning layout are user friendly and the planner have input into the functionality and the configurations. During the cost center planning, or you can say the cost planning, users enter informations into the SAP through the use of planning layout. That is this planning layout we are discussing all about. The layout represents the options the user has on the screen for entering the data. The choices may include activities, cost elements, key figures, and some combinations of all of the three. Additionally, the layout may limit the version or period a user can plan. So you can limit the layout till a particular period or to a particular version as well. Layouts provide you with a tool to tailor the planning environment to meet your exact business requirement. So normally what happens is the management plan before manufacturing that what will be the cost on different expenses, and bifurcate those planning amount to all those expenses. That is what is termed as the planning environment which they do, so as to meet their actual cost, so that the cost doesn't exceed beyond that. So it is important that planning layout are user friendly and the planners have input into the functionality and the configuration as said. In most of the cases, the planner have been working in the Excel based environment. What they do is they do all their working related to the planning of different cost or different expenses in an Excel sheet, and later on they want that to be uploaded into the SAP system as a plan data. So that can even be done if you prepare that particular plan data in an Excel sheet in a particular prescribed format. That particular format can be uploaded into the Excel, and the planning data can be uploaded into the SAP system for cost planning in a very short period of time, and no manual activities are required for that. So SAP delivers a number of planning layouts with the software that will meet the majority of your planning needs. So let's see what are the different planning layouts SAP has provided and how we can create our own planning layout for cost element planning. So as said, there are two layouts of going for a cost planning. One is cost element planning, another based is activity type planning. So we will be covering the cost element planning, which is basically used in most of the industries. So moving to the SAP screen now, we first need to go to the same cost center accounting and then to the planning. So the path is there. In cost center accounting there is manual planning and then user defined planning layout. So the planning refers to the same manual planning. So we can expand this planning over here, and once we expand the planning, within planning you can find manual planning. So you can expand the manual planning here, and once expanded you can see there is an option of user defined planning layout. So this is over here the path, manual planning, then user defined planning layout. So that is over here user defined planning layout. We can expand this tab. So once expanded you will find three options by which planning can be done for cost planning. One is cost element planning, another is activity type planning, and third is a statistical key figure planning. So we'll be moving to the create planning layout for cost element planning. This is the first option, and by which we will be planning for the cost in the SAP system. So we need to execute this tab over here now. Once we have executed, you will find two options over here: create planning layout for cost planning or change planning layout for cost planning. So if you want to create a planning layout for yourself, you need to go to create planning layout, double click on it. So once we double click, it takes you to the next screen, and here you can create your own planning layout from the scratch. Or else there is another option, you can go back and you can change the planning layout, or you can copy an existing planning layout and you can make the needful changes to that planning as well. So what you need to do is to review the SAP delivered planning layout before building your own. It will be helpful to copy an existing layout rather than developing one from the scratch, as that will be more complicated to understand. So if you move to the change planning layout, double click onto the change just to have a look of the different planning layout provided by SAP. Double click on it and you can see there are different list of different plannings as on the screen to you. These are the different planning layouts provided by SAP. If you want planning by cost element, you can go with this. If you want activity input planning, you can go with this. You can want process input, and a lot of such options are there, central planning. So these are a lot of options which are available on the system to you. Now what you can do is you can copy any of these, or you can go to create your own as well. So what we would be doing is we will not be copying anything, because that will be more easier to do. We'll be creating a planning layout for cost planning from scratch. So for that we need to go to the first option, that is create planning layout. So double click onto the create planning layout. Now here you need to assign your own layout number or a code which you want to give it to. Suppose I give it as Z101 cost element planning as a name to it. So now we need to go to create option over here. Once you have given the layout a name to itself and a code, we can move to the next, that is to create. So once I click onto the create option, now you can see a new screen has came up on the screen, and in this screen we need to go to click edit over here on the screen, and in edit we need to go to general data selections. So within general data selections, now you will find that there is a general data selection as well further. So we need to go to this general data selection over here and have to click onto this. So I went to this edit, then I went to general data selection, and within general data selection you have to go to general data selection further. So once I click onto this general data selection, now you will see a new screen has came up on your screen, that is a new tab, that is element definition. Now in this you need to select the characteristics which has to be selected for planning. So the characteristics to be selected are, one is version which you need to select, next is period for planning, fiscal year for which fiscal year you are going to plan, and the planning will be done at the cost center level. So we need to select the cost center. So these are the 4 different things which we have to select. Now once we have selected these, so these are the different characteristics which we will be using in a while for creating the characteristic values. So let's move on to the next. Now we can close that tab. Now we have not done anything with that particular options. Now what we need to go is, we need to go to this lead column over here on the screen. As you can see, we need to put the cursor on, double click on that particular lead column over here. So once we double click onto it, it will give you a list of options. Out of that list of options, we need to select the cost element. Why? Because we are going for cost planning with cost element. So the planning will be done with the help of cost element, where all the expenses are assigned to a cost element, because all the expenses ledger have a cost element. So the planning will be done on the basis of different segregated expenses or the cost. So we need to select this cost element and we need to take it on the other side. So we can move it from the right side to the left side with this option of arrow, move select to left. So once we have selected this to the other side, now you can see the cost element has been moved from the right side to the left side over here on the screen. Now we need to select this option first, that is to set our hierarchy node. So we need to select this hierarchy. Second, you need to go to variable on and off. So we need to select the variable over here. Once we have selected the variable, now you will find that from their list of options, so there is one, that is an option which has been taken. So that is what you need to take over here. So once you have selected cost element from the right to left, and then you have selected the hierarchy over here, and then the variable on off, and then from one will be there, that is the local variable. And now we can move to confirm option. So once we go and click onto the confirm, now the system gives a new pop-up screen to you, so as to decide the lead column will be a characteristics value, or will be a name, or a characteristics value and name, or name and characteristics value. So you need to decide out of these what you need to select as with. So what you need to select out of these are characteristics value and name. So it is what we have selected over here on the screen, and once you have selected, you can go and click onto the confirm or enter. So once entered, you can see on the screen now that the lead column has been replaced by cost element option over here on the screen. So this is what the first part which has been done. Now moving on to the next is that you need to move on to the next column over here, that is column 1. As you can see over here on the screen, column 1 is written as a description. So we need to double click onto this column 1. So once you double click onto this column 1, now be careful, you need to move slowly to understand these steps to create your planning layout. So we need to double click onto the column 1. Now once I double click, now you will see a new pop-up screen has been generated. So once this pop-up screen has been generated, now you will find that there are key figures on the screen at the top. There are a number of different key figures. If you go for having a look of the list of different key figures, we can click on to F4 and can have the list. You can see that there are different list of key figures. So the key figures which we need to select out of these is total plan cost in object currency, that is PWOG. So we need to double click onto this and we need to select this over here on the screen. So it will be replaced by the existing key figure to the total plan cost in object currency. Once this has been done, now we need to move on directly to confirm. So once you click onto the confirm option over here, the system, you can see that it has been replaced with total plan cost object currency. So once you have done that and the name has been replaced from column 1 to total plan cost object currency, now you need to, so now once we are done with the column 1 which has been replaced with total plan cost object currency, now we need to move to the next column. So the next column will be next to this over here, or you can take any of them over here on the screen. So from moving from this to this, now we can double click over here so as to add one more column. So once you double click onto this, you will double click on this, you will see a new top pop-up screen has been generated. I hope you understand that. What you need to do is you need to move from this column to the next column and you have to double click onto this column. So once I double click over here, a new pop-up screen has been generated, and out of this pop-up screen you need to select the element type. So there are 3 different element types on the screen as of now: key figure with characteristics, formula, and attributes. Now what we need to take out of these is the attribute. Now attributes provide additional flexibility to the planning screens by defining in the greater detail the quantity or dollar amount being planned. Attribute values include, among others, unit, exchange rate type, action, and distribution key. By adding the attribute action to the planning screen, the user would have the ability to determine whether the amount being planned should be replaced, be added, or be subtracted from any existing amounts. But if the attributes were not present, the system would default with the replace options. So we'll be selecting this attribute over here and we'll move to confirm or enter on the screen. So it will take you to the next screen. Now as you can see that in attribute there are different options. So attributes can have the unit, distribution key, action, exchange rate type, value date, quantity, and a lot of different options in it. So out of these all, what you need to select now is the distribution key. Now selecting the distribution key is important because for the distribution key only the fiscal year field must be maintained. Recall that the fiscal year was defined in the general data selection and is not visible in this window. So we need to take this distribution key, and this distribution key value will be good for all the columns. What the distribution key does is it divides the value, the plan value, in equal periods. So we'll be selecting this distribution key over here and we'll click onto the confirm option or enter. So once we click onto the enter, now you can see a new pop-up screen again has been generated in front of you. Now out of these, and then I have clicked onto the confirm, and once I clicked onto the confirm, you can see now that the distribution option has been generated over here on the screen to you. Similarly, you can add further more columns. Double click on the next column, select the attributes, then enter, and then over here again you need to select the distribution key. So once you select the distribution key, or even you can take something else as well if you need. If you want text to be taken, you can take text over here. Once you take in the text and confirm on the enter, again it takes you to the next screen so as to element definition text exists, and you can confirm this part, and now a new column will be added for text as well. So similarly you need to create your own layout, that how your layout is and how you want your planning layout to be defined as. So that is what you need to do. This is your layout which has been defined in somehow, just to give you an overview of how you can design your own layout with the help of this. And once this has been done, now what you need to do is you need to move on to this option over here on the top, that is check split plus 6. So you need to click onto this check report, which will check whether these all layout is okay or not, and there is no issues with the particular layout. So once I click onto this check option over here, you will see now there are certain errors which the system has been giving to us. And once this layout is defined and this checkbox shows okay, we can move on and you can save this screen and it will be saved. So this is how you need to create your own layout. So creating a new layout is always a time taking process. There are a lot of issues in that which you need to look for. So I am just giving an overview which you can try and you can create your own planning layout. You can save it. Okay. So moving on to the next part now is, or else what we can do is we can create a standard layout as well as defined in the SAP system, as we have checked. So there are a number of different layouts. You can see this layout over here, which is already defined 10101. You can display that over here with the display options. So we can double click on that and let's see. So you can see over here, once you double click onto this cost element first part, it shows you the layout, activities, cost element, plan fixed value. This is the distribution key, then again planned value, then again distribution key, then plan value. So similarly you can create your own layout as well. Different layouts are there, or else you can do one thing is you can even copy this and you can create your own as well. So this is how we will be creating a layout. You can try and create the layout for yourself. In most of the scenarios what we do is we use a standard layout. Normally if the layout is somewhat different from the standard SAP layouts, in that case you need to move and you have to create your own layout, and for that you must know how a report painter works. So what we will be using is we will be using a standard layout, that is 1-101. How to create, I have just given an overview that you can try and you can create of your own. So moving up to the next now is we are done with the planning layout. Now moving on to the next is planning profile. Planning is based on predefined planning layout in the standard system, which are saved in planner profiles. Planning layouts are entry screens for planning. They are subdivided into planning areas such as cost element or activity type planning or statistical key figures, depending upon which of the options the company want to proceed with. So the planning profile within SAP marry a planning layout to an appropriate area of planning. As said, for example, cost centers, orders, or profitability analysis. There are 4 different standard profile with the software that SAP has provided for planning profile as well. The majority of the planning profile which is used, let's see on the SAP system, so which will give you a better idea. So moving to the path in this particular case now again is we need to go to SPRO first. So we need to go to the same planning part to controlling, and that cost center accounting. In that you need to go to planning, and within planning we need to go to the define user defined planning profile. Okay, we need to go to manual planning. So here you can see define user defined planner profile. So this is, we can execute this configuration step over here. So once we are executing this particular step, now you can see these are the different profiles which are created by a number of different peoples, but you can see these are the four which have been provided by standard SAP to be used for different planning purposes. So the one is SAP 101, that is known as for primary cost, activity type and statistical key figures. The next is SAP 102, that is for activity input, activity type and a statistical key figure. So the third is 103 and the fourth is 104. Now the most commonly used is 101, because whenever the planning is done, it is done with respect to the primary cost elements. So if you look to this, there are these three parts which make you understand the thing: planning, primary cost element, then activity type, statistical key figure. The next is with activity input, and the third one is with revaluation, fourth one is for secondary order cost. So this is the one which is mostly used, that is SAP 101. So that is what majority of CO planning requirements are covered with the profile SAP 101. To use the layout, it must be assigned to a planning profile. During the planning process, the profile is set prior to the data entry. So how we can set that? That is what we will be looking forward to this in this particular step. So what we will be doing now is we will be creating our own profile by selecting this SAP 101. We will copy this profile for using for our own planner profile, and we'll be renaming it with a Z for creating our own profile in the system. So let's click on, once we have selected this over here SAP 101, we can move to copy. Once we click onto the copy, now we can rename it, we can assign a Z in front of that so that it can be created for our own profile, and we can rename the description as well as you wish to. So this is your planning cost okay. You can rename it as primary cost oblique activity types and statistical key figure. So once you have created a copy and you have put the description onto this, now you have to enter on the screen. So once you enter, okay, an entry already exists under the system. So let's create it as Z SAP 100, enter. So once entered, now you can see that it will copy all the details from the standard SAP 101 to Z SAP 100. So we have created a profile Z SAP 100. You can see the data has been copying from the layout, and now the message is generated. Number of dependent entries copied is 39. So once this has been copied, now what we need to do is we need to select the same profile now. Sorry, once we have copied over here, we need to save this layout first of all. Sorry, the profile. First we have to save the profile. So once the profile has been saved, now the next step is to select the same profile over here, and then we need to go to general controlling. Double click onto the general controlling. So once you double click onto the general controlling, it gives you the whole list of different planning areas which the planning profile exists. And out of these all general planning areas, as you can see on the screen, which we will be using is the first one, that is cost center, cost element, activity inputs. So we need to select this first option, and then we have to move to the next part, that is layout for controlling. So we need to double click, we need to select the planning area first, that is cost center, cost element, activity inputs, and then we need to move on to the layout for controlling. Double click onto the layout for controlling. So once you double click onto this, it will take you to the next screen now, as you can see on the system. So once you move to this screen now, what you need to do is, you can see number of options over here: layout, description, these are three options over here as in your screen. So what we need to do over here, one is a default, another is overview, next is integrated Excel, and the next part is file description. So what you need to do is, you need to select the options out of this. So what you are supposed to do is, you have the option of creating your own layout. Now what we can do in this part is, you need to select this overview, overwrite actually, and in case you want the planning data to be uploaded with the help of an Excel sheet, in that case you need to go to this option of integrated Excel, as you can see. So the integrated Excel, you have to activate this part and you have to name the Excel file as a description, and you have to take care that whatever the description you assigned over here, the same description you have to maintain the file with the same description as well. So we'll not be going with this option as of now, we'll be just moving on with the manual planning right now. So you just need to select this option over here to overwrite. Once you have selected this, now we can save the screen over here, and your layout has been, your planning layout or the planning profile both has been assigned to each other. So you can see this is a planning profile and this is the layout basically. So the layout is 1101 and the layout has been assigned now with the profile. So this is what we have been talking about, that in this particular step you need to assign a layout to your planning profile. Without assigning a layout to the planning profile, you cannot go for the planning cost center planning in it. So now we have saved this screen. That means the planning profile configuration steps have been covered, and now we can move to the next part now, that is moving to the unit testing. So these were the three basic configuration steps. That is, one is to maintain the version, the next was the planning layout, and the third one is to planning profile, which has been covered. And now we can move to the unit testing part, where we will be creating certain cost centers and we will be maintaining certain planning values with respect to cost element into the system, and we'll see how the various reports look like once you maintain the planning values for the cost, and what are the different actual cost which has posted into the system, and how you can have different reports on the basis of that. So we'll be now moving on to the unit testing. There are different number of transactions on your screen, like to create the cost center, changing cost element, activity input, planning, then displaying the planning cost element. You can copy plan to plan data from one year to the another year, and even you can lock and unlock the periods for the same as well. And there are various reports for the planning overview, the actual versus the plan cost, comparisons, variance, cost center and cost element wise. That means different cost center with different expenses, you can have the report. You can compare the reports for planning from one period to another periods. So there are huge different number of transactions as per the business requirement, which are as needed in any of the businesses. So moving to these unit testing transactions one by one, first we'll be moving to the cost center. So we'll create a cost center in the system. However, we have already created number of different cost centers once we did the cost center accounting, but yet we'll be creating one more cost center which will not be having any value in it, and we'll be easily able to have a look how that works. So moving to the SAP screen, to create the cost center, the transaction code is KS01. So as already discussed, cost center is an organizational unit within a controlling that represents a clearly delimited area of responsibility where the costs are monitored against a plan value or a budgeted value. The cost incurred by the organization should be transparent, and that is why we have different reports for that, and different cost centers are there by which you can have a look of all these different costs which are incurred. So moving on to this, what you need to do is you need to assign a cost center number over here which you want to create. So if you want to see, you can go for the list of different cost center which are already defined into the system. So you can have a look. This is the cost center which is already created. Similarly, you can create one more cost center or maybe couple of more cost centers accordingly. Now this cost center was created for production related things. Now you can create cost centers for admin, for selling and distribution expenses, maybe for other purposes like HR expenses and all, as you wish to. So suppose I create a cost center now with 110010. I have to put the valid date from and to, from when it will be valid and to what date it will be valid. So I will be taking this as one from December 2014. Now I can now enter onto the screen once I have assigned the cost number which I would be creating and the valid date from and to. Enter on the screen. So once entered, it take you to the next screen, that is the master data screen, where I will be putting the basic settings onto the master data. So suppose I take the first cost center over here, as even in one department there could be more than number of different expenses or different cost centers. Like suppose I take an admin. Within admin I can take travel, or you can say transport can be one of the cost center. Same can be created over here. And now the person responsible, you can name a person who will be responsible over here. Suppose Andy is one guy who is responsible for the admin part, and then you can assign the department over here as well, like admin. And then we can move to the cost center category. You can select the category from over here. So the different categories are there and we can select out of that. So these are the number of different categories. So I would be taking this administration because I am creating a cost center for the admin department. So that has been taken. Now we can take the standard hierarchy. So the standard hierarchy will be taken up by the system of its own because the hierarchy is only one in the system. So once you click onto this F4 or this option, it will take the hierarchy of its own, as you can see on your screen. Then we can move on to the business area. In case there is any business area and you want that cost center should be specifically for that particular business area, then in that case you can assign the business area over here as well. Else you can leave it blank, and we can move to the next is the currency, that is USD dollars, and then we'll be taking the profit center. So if you remember, we have divided the profit center cost centers in three different parts, that is plant 1, plant 2 and plant 3. And we even have discussed in cost center accounting in the last training session that the cost center which is starting with 1 refers to plant 1, and the profit center which is starting with 1 refers to the plant 1 profit center. So in this case the cost center starts with 1, that means it refers to the plant 1. So we'll be taking the profit center for plant 1. So let's see the list of different profit centers in it. Enter. So these are the different profit centers. We can take the profit center first one as 11000, and that has been taken up over here. And now we can save the screen and your cost center has been created. So this is how you need to create your own cost center. Once we have done with this particular transaction, now we'll be moving to the next, that is change cost element activity input planning. The transaction code is KP06. So in this particular part, we'll be now moving to the planning. So in this, primary cost planning on cost center is done. With respect to overall business planning processes, the planning cost include expenses such as salaries, wages, power and fuel, engineering expenses or cost, traveling expenses. So all different kind of an expenses which are a part of the primary organization. This transaction is used to capture the planned cost to the relevant cost centers. So how we will be doing this now? Let's move on to the transaction KP06. KP06, enter. So in this particular part, the prerequisite is that you need a cost center and you need a cost element. Then only you can create the planning for the cost element part. So you must be knowing, even we have discussed earlier, that every expense ledger has a respective cost element in controlling area. So if there is a salary ledger account, the same salary ledger account number will have a cost element as well in the controlling part with the same GL number or the ledger account number. So if that particular cost element has to be planned, in that case you need the cost element number for that particular expense. So what do you need to do over here now in this particular part is you need to maintain the version over here. So you can select from the list of different versions on the system. So the version we need to take is 0, as there is only one version created. Then you need to decide the period for which you want the planning to be done. You can plan it for one particular period, you can plan it for quarter, you can plan it for the whole fiscal year, as you want to. So suppose I want to plan for the whole year, for the whole fiscal year. I will be taking the period from 1 to 12. Then I will be taking the fiscal year, that is 2014. Sorry. And then you need to take the cost center. And the another part you need to take is the cost element. So let's take the cost element. What are the different list of cost element from that? The chart of account is 1000, enter. So you can have a look. These are the different cost element which are already created, and these are the different ledgers also. If you check in the ledger accounting FI part, these are the different ledger number created in the FI module as well. So suppose I take one of these, like I want to go for a planning of rent. So I take the rent cost element over here now on the screen. So I have taken the rent, I have taken the cost center, that is admin transport. And admin transport, this is what you need to take. You have taken the version, the period, fiscal year, cost center, and then the cost element. So once these options have been taken, now we need to move on to the next, that is we need to go to this overview screen. Once you click onto the overview screen, now it will take you to the next screen. So once clicked onto this, okay, it says the cost center, this is not supported in all the periods because this particular cost center is created in the month of December. So it will allow us from the 10th period to 12th period. So we can now go for an overview. So you can see now on the screen that this particular cost center, and this is the expense, that is this is rent. So if you want to go for planning of rent for particular cost center, you can put a value, and this is valid for a period from 10 to 12, that is for a quarter, the last quarter. And you can put any plan value for the first the last quarter, that is the 3 months. So suppose I put it over here as 12000 as $12,000 as the planned fixed cost for rent. What will be the actual rent? That can be compared once the transaction in the financial accounting will be covered. So this is what you can take over here on the screen. Once you have taken this, now you can move on and you can save the screen over here. So even if you want, you can go back and you can even change the plan value as well. So if you see over here on the screen, there are the distribution keys as well. So the distribution keys, if you take, there are a number of different distribution keys. Now if you want this particular planned cost of $12,000 to be divided in monthly basis to each of the period, you need to take equal distribution, that is 1. So in that case it will be distributed equally on the basis of the periods. If you want it to be distributed on the basis of the percentage, then you have to take the distribution key as 3, and if you want to distribute it manually, in that case you need to take it as 0. So I would be taking it as 1 so that it will be equally distributed among the 3 different periods. So that is what you need to take care of, the cost and the distribution key. Now we can go and we can save this screen, and your layout has been, your planning value has been now taken up for that particular cost element. Similarly, if you want, you can again go for, with the same cost center, you can define number of different cost element as well. Like we can take the range. Suppose I want to plan for all the cost elements. In that case, I can take the list from this to this. Whatever the cost centers are there, that will be taken up on the screen. So we can now, from in 2 cost element can be taken, and in one go you can plan for all, whatever the different cost element are on the system. So now in that case, again you can go to overview, and you can see that there is as of now only 1 cost element as on the screen that has been reflected. If you want, you can take further over here, like 40005. Similarly, you can plan for 40006 as well, and you can take the value over here. Suppose I plan it for 10,000, I plan it for 5,000, enter. So even that you can plan it over here as well, and you can save this screen. So in one particular cost center, there could be different number of cost element. Why? Because one particular cost center, like admin transport, in transport only there could be rent, there could be transportation expenses, there could be salaries involved, wages involved, a lot of different expenses are involved. So all those expenses are taken up as a cost element on this screen and can be maintained for the plan value. So you can save the screen and the plan value is maintained. So this is how you can maintain the different cost center plan value with respect to the cost element with the transaction KP06. Now if you want to go back and you want to display the particular planned value, that can be done with KP07. So this will only display you the transactions value KP07. You can see over here on the screen, and you can go to the overview, but you cannot change it over here now, mind it. So you can see over here, these are the different cost element for which we have planned with respect to the cost center, that is admin transport, and one is $12,000, $10,000, $5,000. The total cost element planned with respect to the cost center is $27,000. So moving to the next now is copy plan to plan. During the annual planning process, the last year's plan figures can be copied to the next year's plan. As well as expediting the process, the copied plan value can then be used as a basis to develop a new plan as well. So for that, we need to go to the transaction KP97 so as to copy the last year's plan to the current year fiscal year plan. So let's execute the transaction KP27. Moving to the SAP system, KP97, enter. So once you entered, you can see on the screen there are different parameters: cost center, cost element, selection variant, or if you want to copy all of the cost centers planning value, in that case you need to select all cost centers. And if you want to copy the limited cost centers value, then you can put the range from and to as well. Else we can move to all cost centers. So when you want to copy the plan value from the last year to the current year, you should select all cost center as a basis, and then moving on to the next, that is the template plan. So in the template plan, the version you need to select is 0. The period you have to define, that for what period you want to copy. You want to copy the data for a particular period, for a quarter, or for the whole year. That depends up to you how you want to transfer the data or copy the data. Suppose I transfer it for the whole year, that is 1 to 12 period. Then you can define the fiscal year over here. Suppose I define the fiscal year as 2012 or 2013, and the target will be to which we will be copying it to. So over here we need to put the period again and the fiscal year 2014, and then you need to move on to the next, that is all plan data, then template cost center, and do not change is alright, and the structure without values is alright, test run and detail. So this is what the parameters which you have to fill so as to copy the cost planning from one fiscal year to the another fiscal year. So once you have filled all these details, now you need to go to the option over here, that is selections. So you need to go to this selections over here on the screen. So once you click onto the selections, now it asks you the cost center. Okay, no problem. We can move to the next selection part. So this is it. So you need to go to the plan data selection option over here for all plan data, the selections option over here on the screen, and click onto the selection over here, and you will find the number of different parameters been defined, like for primary cost, secondary cost, other plan data like activities, statistical key figures. So you need to decide whether you want to copy all of those planning values to the current fiscal year, or you want to restrict certain out of them. Like we need to restrict the revenues because we are only planning for the cost, not for the revenue. So we don't need the revenues, we can exclude the revenues option from over here. The rest of the options can be copied from the last fiscal year to the current fiscal year. And now we can move on to the enter button. That is selected. Now the changes to the parameters has been done, and then now we can move to the next. So this is what you need to do, and now we can move on to click onto the radio button to execute this. So once you click onto the execute, it asks you that the version 0 is not defined for the period 2013 because the version 0 has been created only in the fiscal year 2014. So that is what you need to take, and over here we can take it as 15. Okay, now we can execute the options. So once executing, now you can see on the screen the data has been displayed to you. These are the different object types. There are actually 4 data which has been copied on the screen, as you can see, and these are the 4 data which will be copied to 2015 for this part. So that is what you need to do. You need to copy the data in this particular way out. And now we have executed this in the test run part. Similarly, we can execute this in the actual part as well, with taking the test run off. So you can move on to the back again. Yes, and now we can take off this test run, and we can execute this transaction again, and then the whole the value of plan data will be copied from one fiscal year to the next fiscal year. So executing it again now. So once executed, you can see now again, now the processing status has been changed from test run to update run, and it has been updated with the 4 records. Why? Because as of now on the system there are only 4 cost element from whom the planning has been done. These 3 are for the cost center, and the last one is for the internal order part. So this is what the data has been copied, and the similar manner you need to copy if you want to copy the cost planning from one fiscal year to the another fiscal year. So that is it for planning, for copying the planning. Now we can move to the next. And go back. So now moving up to the next transaction is period lock unlock. The transaction code for period lock unlock is OKP1. Now use the period lock to lock the plan and the actual business transactions for a combination of controlling areas, fiscal year, and version to prevent further postings. So in case you want, or the organization wants that no transactions to be posted to a particular version in controlling or a particular fiscal year, then in that case you can go and you can lock that fiscal year or that particular period in the fiscal year. So this work instruction illustrate locking the actual postings for the period as well. So it restricts you from posting the planning transactions as well as the posting transactions both. How we can do that? Let's move on to the SAP screen and have a look for the transaction. So if the transaction is OKP1, enter. So it asks you for 3 parameters. One is controlling area, next is fiscal year, and the version. So it asks you for the fiscal year because for which fiscal year you want to restrict it, and as well as one particular controlling area can have more than one version. So you need to define for which particular version you want to put the restriction of the controlling area. So once you have taken this, now we can go to actual. So they are both the options. You want to restrict or lock the period for actual transaction, or you want to lock the period for planned transactions. So I would be restricting it for actual. Now once you move on, you can see on the screen there are different list of different activities on the screen, and these are the different period from 1 to 16. So in this, whichever period you want to lock, you can go and you can select that particular option. Like I want to restrict the month of 10th period, that is the, or you can say as 9th period, that is December 2014 fiscal year. So you can select all of these lists as on the screen, and what will happen is you will not be able to post any CO transactions within the CO module, because what we are doing is which are restricting all of these for the period 9. So for the period 9 means that for the period of December 2014 you will not be able to post any transactions in the system. So this is how the period can be locked, and if you want to unlock that period, you need to come back again over here and you have to take this checkbox off, and in that case it will be deactivated. That means the posting will be allowed. So as of now we have selected these and we can save this screen over here. So once it will be saved, that means you will not be able to post any transactions related to controlling, actual transactions related to controlling into the system. So once saved, you will see that period locks for control area Z100 have been changed. Now you want to make the changes again, you need to again go back to the same screen, actuals, and you can see these are the options. You can go and you can select this and you can unlock this period as well. So we have selected all together, and now go to this unlock period and it will unlock the periods. So you can see all the list, all the tick marks have been taken off. That means again the period has been unlocked for posting the actual transactions in the controlling module, and you can save this screen. So this is how you can lock and unlock the period for controlling transactions, even for actuals as well as for the planned data. Similarly, you can do the same activity for the planning transactions as well as on the screen. So this is how your period lock unlock works. So these are the different unit testing transactions which we have seen. Now we'll be having a look on few of the reports in cost center planning which will be helpful for you in different ways. Now moving to the first report, that is cost center planning overview. The transaction code for that is KSBL. So moving on to the SAP system, KSBL, enter. So once you take this, you need to select the cost center over here if you want to have the planning report for that particular cost center from period to period. If you want to have it from first period, you can take period 1 to 12, and you need to select the cost center over here so as to have the planning report for that particular cost center. So this particular report is for a particular cost center reporting purpose for planning. And now you can move. We have selected the cost center. We need to select the fiscal year, then the period for which we want the planning report and the version, and then the output in ALV grid. Now we can execute it. So once you execute the transaction, you can see on the screen that it shows you the different cost elements, details, and it shows you that the value in the company code currency is, this is the 12,000, 10,000, and then 5,000. These are actually the plan values, mind it, because this is the planning report. So the plan value for component cost element, that is rent, is $12,000. Loss on sale of assets is $10,000. Then depreciation on building is $5,000. The total primary cost planning is $27,000 as on the screen. So this is used for the planning overview, which will give you the all the planning overview with respect to one particular cost center. So one particular cost center can have a number of different cost element, that is you can plan for different expenses within the cost center. That is what the detail has been provided. Now we can move to the next report. This report is very helpful. S_ALR_870136611. The report is about the actual and the plan variances in the cost center. So executing this report. So this is it. You need to select the cost controlling area, fiscal year for which you want to have the report, then the period for which you want to have it. You can have it for from 1 to 12 period. You can even have it from 10 to 12 period. You can have it for one particular period as well, 10 to 10 as well. So this is what you need to take it over here. The selection groups are not mandatory. If you want the reporting for different cost center group or element group wise, you can take that also. Else you can execute it for all the cost centers. So once you execute this report, it will give you the output in as on the screen. You will find that the cost center, these are the different cost element. So this report gives you the basically the cost element wise planned and actual data. So you can see there is no actual cost involved in this, because with respect to these different cost element, as of now no actual transaction has been posted in the SAP system. But if you go for the plan part, we have maintained this planning value, if you remember, in the same training session in a while back. And you can see the total variance is now from 0 to 12,000 is 12,000. So 100% variance is there as of now. And this is how your actual plan variance report is displayed to you. This displays you the cost element wise plan value. That means expenses wise plan value. But suppose I want to have, and even if you want to bifurcate these in the group wise, then you can even select these groups. There are two groups as of now. One is production and one is admin. These are two cost centers. So if I want to have the cost center wise cost element reporting, even that can be generated over here. So you can go for that also with the options, as you can see on the screen. When I click on the admin transport, it shows me the admin related cost element. If you go for the production wise cost center report, it will show me the production, that is the cost center. This is the cost center, that is production. And within production, there is no plan value or actual values. But if you move on, you will find the actual. This is the statistical value as well, that is for the information purpose. So this is how you can execute your actual plan report over here as well. So every report has got some or the other differences with each other, which will give you some or the other benefits which you need for the reporting purpose. Now moving up to the next report is S_ALR_87013612. Now this report is again for cost center actual plan comparison. If you execute this report, the screen layout is similar to that which we have executed the last one. We can execute this report over here now. So once you execute, you can see the detail, but this report has a difference that the last report was that you are finding the cost elements in that, but now I am finding the cost centers in it. And in this particular cost center, the cost center of production has an actual cost of $40,000. However, there is no plan cost in that, whereas the cost center of admin has got no actual cost expenses booked, but there are a cost planning of $27,000. And if you take the total of that, the total actual is $40,000 and the plan is $27,000. So actually the variance is of $13,000, which is around 48% of variance between the plan and the actual. Similarly, you can move to the next report of cost center cost element wise report. So if you move to the next report now, this is about S_ALR_87013613. and if you enter on this, executing this report. So in this particular report also we have to put some parameters for executing the report. So it will take a couple of small more time. Now again the same parameter, but the output will be different. So let's execute this report. So once executed, you can see now within the same report you will find the cost element as well as the cost center. In first line there is a cost center. So cost center 110000, it is production, has an ordered settlement of this much. And then again the same cost center has got this cost element, the same cost center has got this cost element. Then the next cost center, that is admin, has started. So it has been following by cost center and element, cost center and element. So you can see that the same cost center of production has $10,000 as actual cost, whereas in the same part the purchase, that is the purchase account, that is the purchase account expense or the cost element, has also booked the same. Similarly, for the production cost center there is 30,000 of salary distribution, and in the cost salary account also there is 30,000 of cost element distribution. So this is how it can be done. Even if you want, you can collapse it from over here so as to have a lesser amount, or you can collapse it to cost element level as well. So once you collapse this all, what it shows you is, it shows you the report on the basis of cost element only. But if you expand it, it will give you the cost center as well. So it gives you the bifurcations of cost element as well as the cost center together in the same report. So that is this report all about. Then the next report again is cost center and period wise report. So in this particular report we can execute the 614. It is all in a sequence from 611, 612, 613, 614. So we'll execute this report now, and you can again the selection screen will be same as a parameter, but the output will be different again. In this you will find the output on the basis of different period to period wise. So now we can execute this report. So we can move to execute. You have to fill the controlling area, fiscal year, and then the period for which you want to execute. So now over here you cannot take from and to period, you need to take period at a time. So suppose I take it for period 10 and I execute this report. So as you can see, the report executed on the screen, the layout of the report is on the system. It shows you the date on which it has been executed, the pages of the report, user ID, requested by, controlling area, the period for which the report has been executed, and the fiscal area. The plan version is 0. Now moving down the report, page down, you can see the transaction data on the screen. On the one side you will find the plan data for the period 10, the variance in the period, and you can find the different cost element on the screen. That means the different expenses which has been incurred, against which the plan data, plan cost has been maintained on one side, on the right hand side. On the left hand side you will find, on the right hand side it only shows you the detail of actual period 10 and planned period 10 for which we have executed, whereas on the right hand side you will find the detail related to the whole period, that is 1 to 10. It is the accumulated value of the actual cost incurred and the plan cost which has been maintained, as you can see on the screen, and the variance has been reflected to you on the screen as well. So it gives you the report, a detailed report on the basis of the period with respect to the cost elements and the cumulated actual cost and the plan cost from the first period till the period for which the report has been executed, as on the screen. So this is how this period report for cost center and period wise reporting has been executed. Similarly, you can post more and more data within the same cost center. You can maintain certain plan value in that. You can post certain transactions, actual transactions with the transaction FB50 with respect to the cost center, and you will see that the actual cost incurred will be reflected to you and the plan value will also be reflected, and you can have an analysis of the variance on that as well. So this is how you will be executing this report. Now moving up to the next report is financial statements, that is F.01. Even you can make your comparisons of financial statement with respect to the cost incurred in the planning, the planned cost with in the financial statement, which gives a basic overview to the management that how they are incurring the cost and how far or what is the overspending on the cost or what is the underspending on the respect to the cost has been done with the transaction F.01. So let's execute the transaction F.01. Enter. You need to take the cost of accounts, the company code, and then you have to take the fiscal year version over here, and now you can go to ALV grid control. So you can see the parameters. This you must have executed if you have been working on the SAP FI module as well. So you need to put the chart of account, company code, fiscal year financial statement version, then the reporting year, year 1 to 2, comparison year, and you have to take care that this plan version you have to take. So you can select the plan version from the list of different versions as on the screen. So what we need to take is the plan version 0 has to be taken. So that is what we have selected. Now we can move on to execute the report. So once you execute the report, okay, enter. So you can have a look of different screen over here. These are the absolute values and there is no plan value as of now in this screen. So let's check with the other version. So we've taken the second one, planning version as 1. Let's execute this. So there is no planning version as of now in this part. This can be taken up just for the financial statement. So we can leave this financial statement part, as this has nothing to do with the cost center accounting and comparisons. So this is how you can execute these different transactions and different reports in the SAP system, and you can have a look and how these reports are executed, how this variance analysis different reports, as we have checked, is helpful for the management in different perspective for understanding different scenarios and the management decision making part. So this is all about the cost center accounting. Now we are done with the cost center accounting. We have covered the cost center actual part in the last training session, and today we have covered the cost center planning, where we can go for the planning of the cost as well as the actual cost, and the comparisons are done at the end of the period or a particular quarter on a year-to-year basis. So we'll see you in the next training session with a new topic. We'll take care. Thank you.